Well, a happy day to you. It is Thursday, December 6th, 2018, and this is the first edition of Beyond the Panel. Thank you so much for joining me as we're going to take a deep dive into the comics that just dropped yesterday. We have Qui-Gon Jinn #1, we have Star Wars 58, and then we have a Star Wars Adventures comic out. It's a #2 in the series. It is a Destroyer Down, and so we'll talk about each one of these comics. And then what we'll do is we'll take a look at what's out next week. We also got some new news. We got new news. We have a new Star Wars comic that we already know about for 2019 now as of yesterday. We're learning about Visions of Vader, so we'll have a brief conversation about that as well. What that might entail, what we might have seen in previous Star Wars comics in the last couple of years that might indicate what we're getting with that series. So we'll break all that down momentarily. Really excited about it. But first things first, I want to make sure that you know that the show, really, not just this segment, because this is kind of a test run of a secondary show that we'd like to have here on the Beyond the Blast Doors channel. But this is sponsored by the Fantasy Shop in Maplewood, Missouri, proudly serving St. Louis since 1981. These guys have been with us for the last several months, and we really appreciate their support. They have everything: comics, collectibles, toys, Magic the Gathering, board games. The Fantasy Shop in St. Louis, proudly serving St. Louis since 1981, was just in there a couple weeks ago over the Thanksgiving holiday to check out this new layout. This is a new location for them, and it is exceptional. Everything has its place, a little bit more room, and enough room to do a live show. So that's just going to throw that out there. We'll see. We don't want to rush things, but really excited what's happening here for Beyond the Blast Doors. In case you missed it, just this past Saturday night, we had our very first live show. So episode 49 was live, and we had an absolute blast. Have gotten a lot of great feedback from a lot of supporters of the channel, fans of the show, and they say keep doing it live. So now every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Central, so whatever that is for you, 10 a.m. Central, that's when we're going to be dropping our new episode every week, a live format show. And the way I envision it is if you watch like ESPN, kind of like that live show format, we're going to have segments, we're going to have microscopic breaks to let us catch our breath and get a drink, whatnot. But we're doing everything we can to have live interviews and have a bit more interaction. So really excited about these things. But what are we doing right now? We're in Pages, we're not in Pages, Pixels, and Pieces. See, I'm so used to the show. Beyond the Panel is the name of this show, and we're going to dive into the comics. But first, I want to see if anyone is with me in the chat, and I do have JLS Comics hanging out. Jesse, great guy, great channel, loves to talk Star Wars. Very knowledgeable about comic books in general. So JLS Comics, so glad that you're with me in the live chat. If you're watching this live, please go ahead, throw a comment, throw a question, throw anything in that live chat, and we'll talk about it. If you're catching me on the rewind, be sure that you leave a comment below so we can continue this Star Wars conversation. But the first comic that I want to talk about is Qui-Gon Jinn #1. This is Age of Republic, and we've talked about over the last couple of weeks how there's going to be 30 to 40 of these comics drop between the Age of the Republic, Rebellion, and the Resistance. And this comic did not disappoint. I had an absolute blast with this issue. Qui-Gon Jinn is maybe one of the best parts of the prequel trilogy and least explored because we only get one movie with him. But in case you didn't know, Jody Houser is the writer on this. Corey Smith, the penciler. Walden Wong does the ink. Java Tartaglia is the colorist. And we have Travis Lanham as the letterer. So I'm trying to give everybody a shout out there. But you look through this comic and you're taken away by the work of Corey Smith and Walden Wong because visually it's a very appealing book. But you get into the story. Jody Houser does a tremendous job with dialogue. There are moments where I feel that they took Qui-Gon Jinn out of the movie and threw him directly into this comic because it seems to be so on point with the character. And that makes me happy. We're dealing with a dispute right off the bat with Qui-Gon Jinn. He's been dispatched to a planet to take care of a royal princess whose trees are being attacked by this enemy clan. And I love the visuals. You saw the opening frame of Qui-Gon there with his lightsaber, but seeing him in action under fire is pretty cool. This is the Priestess of the Wood is who he is protecting, and they end up going to Coruscant as safe haven. And Qui-Gon is really conflicted in this comic, because the princess at some point refers to the Jedi as warriors, and that really bothers him. He feels that that is not the reputation the Jedi should have. They are peacekeepers. And this dialogue here between him and Yoda is just exceptional. This feels like a conversation you'd have in a flashback of the Clone Wars, like I said earlier in Episode 1. Mind-blowing. They have this conversation, a conversation of rich dialogue that is just, it's so good. I will say that probably at least one more time. Qui-Gon has to go off, and he lets the Force guide him to a new planet. And so this is a planet that is not known about, not important to be on the database of the planets in the galaxy, but it's rich in the Force, and he feels peace, and then he feels the dark side pull towards him, as you're seeing on your screen. And I will not give away what happens after that panel, but eventually he comes back to Coruscant. I got to make sure that you have still reason to go buy the comic. I can't tell you everything that happens. I have to let you find out a couple of these nuggets on your own. But he discovers something with the dark side on this planet, and he returns and he finds Master Yoda, and he is talking about balance. And that is the theme of this issue, balance. And I think this also gives us some insight into that conflict that Qui-Gon Jinn had with the Jedi Council, with the Jedi Order. You know, you get some references in the original, or not the original, but the prequel trilogy, that Qui-Gon had an opinion, and he never kept that away from the Council or his fellow Jedi. If he agreed with something or disagreed, he'd let you know, and that's what kept him off the Council. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon had that conversation in Phantom Menace. And you get a hint of that here. I don't want to call it defiance, but there is a moment where he and Yoda, subtle tension. And I think that's really wonderful done by everyone involved with this comic. Visually, with the writing. This was truly incredible. I am only disappointed because I know that this is not an ongoing series. It's a one-shot. And I really would have liked to have more Qui-Gon Jinn story. So if anyone wants to go out there and start a petition, I would be fine with this to get Jodie Houser her own ongoing Qui-Gon Jinn series, or give her 10 issues. Just let her do more with this character, because Qui-Gon is a fan favorite. He is a rich character. You can dive into a lot. I think he has a lot of interesting elements that Obi-Wan has. I think there might be past love with Qui-Gon Jinn. I think that you could go and go back to him with Dooku and see what that looked like, Dooku as a Jedi. But I could be wrong. But it looks like even before Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon was accustomed to being a representative of the Jedi Order and going out and doing these missions, you know, going into battle, for example. It was pretty cool to see. So let me know what you think about Qui-Gon Jinn #1 in the comments down below. Are you going to be picking up all of these Age of the Republic, Age of the Rebellion, Age of the Resistance issues? It's around 30 or 40 comics, so quite a bit to choose from. Excited about next week's drop. I'll let you know about that in just a second. But the next comic that we want to talk about is Star Wars 58. We're back to Hubin, as I believe how we pronounce this planet. And it's kind of like a farm, kind of rural planet. And to me, it's fascinating because we're starting to see, I think, Luke's maturity. I think we're starting to see even more romance between Han and Leia. And I bring up the romance as that large creature is eating that man's leg. But hear me out on this, because this issue is one of conflict for Luke. And it's also part of romance. He's going to fall in love, we think. But this Thane Marcona guy seems to be bad news, or there's something that he's not telling us, the reader, or our band of rebels. Because when you read through this story, he just seems to be, there just seems to be something behind him, and he's very passionate about training Luke, and like he knows things about Luke that Luke hasn't revealed. For example, just knowing that Luke had a lightsaber, never revealed that, you know. So Thane seems to be very cunning, very aware. Might be something to that. His, I believe it's his sister. You see them here fighting, which is nice to see. I like this. I've always wondered, how did Luke improve as a swordsman between episodes 4 and 5? And clearly it wasn't just this one training session, but very cool to see here them getting to work. I do want to point out, though, that I'm really blown away with the art. Really blown away with the art, and I feel like I need to take a moment and just say something about this. Because Angel Yanzeta is the new artist and has been on the last few issues, and it is so refreshing. I love everything about these comics. The faces, I think, have been toned down just a little bit in regards to how their likeness is compared to the actors that we're so familiar with in the movie. Here's a good look right now where you're seeing Leia and Han, and you're seeing a Harrison Ford-inspired Han Solo. So here we go. We have our two lovebirds. They're walking through the forest, and it comes out that the grandmother is Force sensitive, that she had a lightsaber of her own. And so they're telling these secrets. Now, here's a great moment. Leia asked Han if she wants to come in to her room, and he's like, "Oh, I thought you'd never ask." And then they go inside the room, and it turns out that Leia has been doing some strategic work for the rebellion. So Han gets his hopes up, and I guess that's what I wanted to bring up, because one of my biggest critiques of The Last Jedi, for example, is the humor is our humor, the humor that we would use here in 2018, and it really took me out of the movie at multiple points. There's humor throughout this run that Gillen, she gets it right, and she knows how to do Star Wars humor because it's just funny bits, and it's not current trends. You know what I'm saying? So there's no tooling in this issue. But that moment that I mentioned there at the very end where Han and Leia are together and, "Hey, you want to come into my room?" "Oh, I thought you never asked, princess." It fit the character for one. It felt this was a conversation I would hear maybe in the halls of Hoth too. I mean, about that point of the relationship. And so really enjoyed that. Cannot encourage you to pick up this issue more. If I'm being fully transparent, I have not followed the main Star Wars run from start to here at issue number 58. I have spent quite a bit of time weaving in and out. I found other lines that were more interesting to me at the time. Darth Vader by Charles Soule being the main one. 25 issues, that wraps up here in just a matter of days. Kind of bummed about it. Kind of excited to know what Charles does next. But here I am going back on the main Star Wars run, and I'm really enjoying it, really being rewarded. And I think that Salvador LaRocca is an incredible comic book artist, and I enjoy a lot of his work. But there was something about what he was doing on Star Wars that wasn't allowing me to fully enjoy the comic, and so excited to have Angel here doing tremendous work, really enjoying every panel. So really excited about that. Would love to know what you think about Star Wars 58. Are you reading this comic? What do you think about where this comic is headed? They say that they're going to be on Hubin for as much as 5 months, unless Luke's plan at the very end works. Who knows? Is this an environment that you think is rich enough for stories for a couple more issues? Let me know in the comments below. We have our third comic of the week. We are flying by, having so much fun with you on Beyond the Panel. Hope you're enjoying this kind of format for the show. Canon Throwback and Destroyer Down. This is a Star Wars Adventures comic line. Scott Beatty is the writer on this story. And then you have Derek Charm as the artist, Tom Long doing the lettering. And really enjoyed this comic. And I don't follow Star Wars Adventures. I've talked about this a few times on the show. I mean, I know that this comic is for kids. This line is for young children to get them interested in Star Wars, and especially right now, let's get them attached to the sequel trilogy characters. And here we are with Rey on Jakku. You have Unkar Plutt's thugs. They're all trying to scavenge on this Star Destroyer. Not the iconic one that you see there at the beginning of Force Awakens. This is a smaller... Obviously, there was the Battle of Jakku, so a lot of these kind of ships crashed into the planet. Rey meets this astromech droid, and it's not an Imperial. It's a rebel astromech. And so they have this conversation. The Junkers are trying to steal the good stuff, but they're, for some reason, afraid of ghosts. But they get a hologram confused for Ghost. A cool swinging action scene here with Rey. Kind of reminiscent of a familiar scene in A New Hope. The art is simple. The dialogue is short and quick-paced, and you saw that all these dead bodies, I'm assuming they're dead bodies, or they're just like trooper armor falling down. But then we're thrust into a flashback, and this is explaining how the droid got there, it turns out to be a rebellion pilot, and so you're seeing right now snippets of how those final moments played out for the Star Destroyer and this rebel pilot who tried to to save the day. This rebellion was following the ship and left the main group of rebels, and so as you can see here, there's malfunction with the destroyer. The rebel pilot gets caught up into it, and then they go crashing down. Now, what I love about this comic is the deep dive that we get. I am blown away by an old throwback. This is canon, but this is a throwback to a time when I was young and very happy and impressionable. 2003 was when the Star Wars Clone Wars micro series dropped. Okay, and what I loved about that was Season 1 to me was my favorite compared to Season 2, even though the Season 2 was fewer episodes, but they were like 20 minutes long, like actual shows. Season 1 was a bunch of like 2-minute shorts. And Chapter 6 was Red Attack. It's a planet where, at the time, a cloaked figure invites Count Dooku to pick a new bounty hunter to do his bidding, and the Separatist bidding. This cloaked figure turns out to be Asajj Ventress, and this was the first introduction of the character. And she kicks butt. She ultimately falls to her death, we suspect, at the end of the first season with a duel against Anakin Skywalker. And so really appreciated the mention of this planet. And, of course, now Red Attack gets mentioned again in the Clone Wars. Asajj Ventress further explores. That's where Dooku found her. So that's consistent with the micro-series. Again, the micro-series is not canon. And so I just appreciate that little nugget because I feel I'm rewarded for something that I watched back in 2003. So that's really cool. If you go online, you can find more information about the planet, but just a really cool treasure. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more in depth this Sunday on episode 50 live here on the Beyond the Blast Doors channel. So be sure you join us for that. Should be a lot of fun. Really excited about having that conversation with you on Sunday. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got the new Thrawn book that dropped. We have the new Visions of Vader comic that dropped. Kevin Smith has apparently been on the set of Star Wars Episode 9, and he says that J.J. Abrams is doing the Lord's work. So we're going to find out exactly why Kevin Smith says that J.J. is doing the Lord's work. For me, that makes me very happy. I wouldn't want him to say anything other. You don't expect him to say anything other. But Kevin Smith is a true Star Wars fan. So if this stuff wasn't looking cool, he wouldn't be giving these compliments. So before we wrap up this episode, or we'll call it this issue of Beyond the Panel, let's go ahead and talk about the comics that are coming out on December 12th. And I'm just going to leave this image up quickly. As you can see, Imperial Cadet number 2. We have Darth Maul, The Age of the Republic, single issue. Excited to see that play out. And then we have, Dr. Aphra number 27. Heads up. Lot of variants for Darth Maul. You're going to have a Luke Ross cover, McCraig design cover, McCone puzzle piece cover, and then you have a movie cover. So you have 4 variants here. You do have a Reese Galactic Icon cover for Dr. Aphra, Martin cover for Imperial Cadet. Also, we are getting Star Wars Volume 9 Hope Burns in the paperback trade form. So keep your eyes out for all this. Probably most anticipating the Age of Republic Darth Maul. We'll follow Dr. Aphra, number 27. Last week we talked about the pros and cons of the series, why this character will probably transition to live action. You know what? If the fans can will Star Wars, the Clone Wars, to come back onto TV, then I am open to anything. If the fans cry and shout and cheer loud enough for Dr. Aphra, I would not be surprised if it happens. If I'm looking at the covers, though, for Maul, I didn't include them. I probably would say this cover here that you're seeing on your screen is just the standard first cover. This is the one to get. This is the one to make sure that you get into a Mylar with a full back because it's just the most stunning. and something about Darth Maul wielding a double-sided lightsaber and two blades coming at him is pretty cool. Does not look like Naboo. I mean, all we do is get a piece of wall, but that could be Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan slashing at him. I'm not sure. I don't know. But what do you think? I want you to let me know down in the comments below so that we can continue this conversation. Whether you're watching live with me, you can comment in that live chat, or you can go ahead and leave a comment after the rewind, well, catching me with the rewind, and so we can continue this Star Wars conversation. All right, that's it. First episode of Beyond the Panel is in the books. I'm feeling really good about this. The only other thing that I can think of is speaking briefly about one more thing. I have one more surprise, and that would be Vader Dark Visions. So here we go. This is coming out in 2019, just got dropped on StarWars.com within the last 24 hours. And I believe, and we'll talk about this more on this week's episode on Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Central, I think we might have gotten hints of this when watching, or rather reading Charles Soule's Darth Vader comics, because there were times during meditation that you would go inside Vader's mind, and you would see like this red and black kind of plane. Maybe was filled with hate, and it was his meditation place, and it's where he saw, when you saw Vader, bring me back on camera here. When you saw Vader, you see that he sees himself as part man and part machine, because his torso is in this red, and it looks like it's living. And his arms and legs, though, are black. They're dark, suggesting that they're machine. And so he's surrounded in this red plane. Maybe he's surrounded by, this is just the dark side of the Force in his meditation place. But I wonder if that at all indicates what we're going to see with this Dark Visions miniseries. And I'm really excited about it. In case you didn't know, Dennis Hopeless, who did Cloak and Dagger, Jean Grey, is writing this new adventure. It's a mini-series. You also have Brian Lovell doing the art on this. Not sure how many issues it's going to be. I'm going to guess 5. They say it's a limited series, and this story begins next year in March. So obviously, if you're interested in seeing what these Dark Visions are, you're going to want to reach out to your local comic book shop like we will. We'll call the Fantasy Shop in Maplewood, St. Louis, and we will make sure that we pre-order this book for the March drop and see what's going on inside. Cover art, the image that I flashed up there for you is by Greg Smallwood. Looks pretty fascinating. A little gothic. I like that. Those aren't crows that were up in the top corner, but they look like crows, and so, I mean, maybe there's like death involved with this too. Which, if you're talking about Darth Vader and talking about Star Wars comics, death, man. Really excited to check out that book. It looks like it has a lot of potential, and especially very timely when you find out that Chuck Wendig's Star Wars Darth Vader comic series limited run got canceled with 3 issues already complete on the shelf. And then when Charles Soule says, hey, I'm done after issue 25, you're like, well, what's next for Vader? Well, real quick, we got the answer. They're going to do another story with Vader mini-series. I'm saying 5 issues. Let them prove me wrong. If it's more, no one's complaining. Really excited to see how that checks out. Well, it looks like we have some activity in the live chat. JLS Comics says, I ran out. I'm back now. I'll read anything with Darth Maul in it. I think that's a good point. There was a miniseries earlier in the year that was really exceptional. It was 5 issues, and it was, I should say, I think it might have been, I think it was February or March. I'm spacing on that fact. But Darth Maul basically, right before the events of the Phantom Menace, disobeys Palpatine, and he goes off this off-world to hunt down a Jedi and kill a Jedi apprentice. And so it's a 5-issue arc, and really fun story there, where at one point he has to team up with this Jedi apprentice. So if you haven't checked that out, JLS Comics, make sure that you go and find that. I think I might actually have doubles of each one, so I can take a look. Maybe it's an act of kindness I can send your way. I'll double check and let you know, but it is a great read. We have Lords of the Long Box. Hey, I'm finally able to watch a live show. Hey, man. So glad you're with us. Watch the auction. No, it wasn't the auction. It was just a regular show last night, and you guys crushed it. Always enjoy the show that you do with Otto and Dark Side Jedi, and just trying to follow your example. And JLS for that matter too. You guys put on a great live show on both of your channels, and we're just trying to do the same thing. So if you haven't already, we had that live show this past Saturday, episode 49. It's on the YouTube channel. If you guys could click on that, give us some feedback in the comments below. whether it's a topic that we cover that you really enjoyed or just thoughts on the live format, that would be much appreciated. It's a 2-hour stream. The episode was an hour and a half, and we had, I think, like 20 topics in the show. It was too much. I just got excited. We were going live, and it looked kind of like this. It was even a new set design, and it's actually going to change again for this Sunday. So I'm really excited about that. So yeah, let me know what you think. Back in the chat, Lord's is saying hi to Jess. It might just be, it's a small group this morning. This is the first time that I'm doing Beyond the Panel. So I think it's going to evolve over time, but just kind of like the format that I did today, it's the comics that came out on Wednesday. It's the comics that will be coming out next week, just taking a look at the covers and maybe one that sticks out to me the most. And then if anything new drops or anything breaking, we'll take a look at that. But also, this is an opportunity for us to have a conversation on the live chat. And then also we can continue that Star Wars conversation when people are watching on the rewind. I want to make that clear. I always come back and revisit the comment section. So the moment you comment, usually within a couple hours, I'm right there trying to respond to you. So JLS, I wonder if they'll ever release the Wendig stuff as an OGN down the road. Man, I don't know. My impression with Marvel is that they don't want to touch anything with Chuck Wendig with a 9.5-foot pole. And I even think I got that reference to the Grinch wrong. But they fired Chuck Wendig within the last 5 weeks, right? And they say, at least we believe it's because that it's his behavior on social media and the interaction that they don't like seeing with a fan base. And so they fired him. And then a couple weeks later, it comes out that he had 3 of the 5 issues done. They were on the shelf, ready for release. Comic book shops were taking pre-orders. I mean, we had called the Fantasy Shop down in St. Louis. We had asked for that on our pull and hold, and they got taken off. We're like, what's the deal? Well, it's because they scrapped the whole thing. If they release it, that'd be great. On last week's episode, I asked the guys, I was like, why not have someone else come in and finish this arc? Jesse told me, because he's written a few things, he just says, it would be kind of painful to create something, be forced to leave it before you're done with it, and then someone else come in and finish it, and it not be what you would have done. I can respect that. I think this is just Marvel as a business saying, you know what, we fired him because of his behavior. We're just going to scrap this whole series and move forward. Not sure what the losses are on this for Marvel. There's obviously significant resources invested into this. You have 3 issues made. That's a lot of manpower. I don't know. We'll see. If I'm being honest, I'd like to see it. Maybe not all 3 issues. Maybe just release the first one, and then we can all kind of speculate what it all could have been. No idea. But I love that question, and I'd love to know because Chuck Wendig, for me, he did Aftermath, which was a good book. It was not well received by a lot of folks, but Life Debt, Empire's End, those 2 final books of that trilogy, absolutely crushed. He is a genius storyteller, but he does not hold back on social media. If he has an opinion, he will share it with you. He's kind of like Qui-Gon Jinn in a way. Going back to the live chat, yes, JLS says, thanks, man. I got to step up the production value like you guys, though. Everyone has their strength, and I think that we all agree that with anything on YouTube, the value is in the content. So if we're having a really good conversation, that's my goal. And we got some bells and whistles, but as far as visuals go, but that's because I work in TV professionally. My buddy who just came on last week to be our director, he's actually operating the system that allows us to go live, and he's punching every slide that you see. He is actually a TV director himself. My buddy's back home. Steve is a graphic designer. The other one is an animator. So you just have pros that are finding a passion project over Star Wars. And I'm pretty happy with it. But as you can tell, visually the camera needs to be upgraded. I'm using like a 10-year-old webcam. So next week, so not this episode 50, but on episode 51, we have a brand new webcam, top grade. Really excited to see how this bumps up the look of our show. So as you are, as Lords and Longbox are, we're always trying to increase the quality of our conversation. But that's the main goal. Having good content, having good conversation that people feel like they can join, because we want this to be a fun, informative, engaging, welcoming Star Wars conversation where we can have difference of opinion, but it's respected. I've been pretty open in this episode. I said that I'm not the biggest fan of The Last Jedi, but I'm not going to insult anybody who likes that movie because I'm sure for a lot of people, that movie got them right there. Going back into the chat, I would love to talk Star Wars TV and movies one day. Lords and Longbox. Man, we're going to bring you on. I figured out a way to do that last night at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm doing another test run tomorrow when my buddy Jordan comes over. We're going to make sure that the online call, it's either going to be with Google Play or Skype, but we'll get that figured out. But we'll make that happen, have you come on and do a segment for the show. That won't be a problem. It's only a matter of time. And JLS, you brought me on your show one time, and despite my poor connection and losing signal, you still treated me like a human being. So I appreciate that, and you'll have to come on the show too. JLS asked, did you hear what Kevin Smith said about the Star Wars set he visited? Yeah, he bawled about it. He was talking about how he'd been on set. He saw 2 scenes shot, and he says that JJ is doing the Lord's work, and we're going to talk about why he said that on episode 50 this Sunday, 10 a.m. Central. So whatever that is for you at home, wherever you are watching this, just got to convert 10 a.m. Central to your time. We'll be having that discussion, but it seems like there is a scene in particular that Kevin Smith really latched onto. And yes, Lords, JLS, yes, someone delivered a career best performance apparently. And there was a hint in there that he gives. He doesn't say what character, but he says it's from a character that he's seen in these movies before. So he actually did slide something in there for us. And so what we're going to do on episode 50 is speculate who we've seen before and who is giving that performance. Could it be a incredible performance from someone beyond the grave? Who knows? It could be. I'm going to have fun with that conversation, I'm sure, with Jesse and David this Sunday, episode 50, Beyond the Blast Doors. Want to let you guys know before I sign off, and I am signing off because I got to go meet Gilbert. It is his birthday today. We're going to read some comics before I go into work. I want to let you know that we have now on our website, beyondtheblastdoors.com, released our official show pin. This is the logo of our show. You see it there in the bottom left of your screen. Really excited about this, to be releasing merch. And we've debated about how we would do this. And I always said that I felt that we needed to have a really good product, and then we had to have a dedicated fan base. And we have like 20 or 30 people that are really faithful to watching our show. And so the guys were like, we want to make a pin. Like, we're going to go to conventions. We need to have some swag to give away. So we had that, beyondtheblastdoors.com. Go to the shop. You can check that out. Also, that can be a website that you bookmark. And when you want to catch the first episode, the latest episode, go to the website. Under the blog, you have a date. I think we go back to episode 25 on there. So a lot of fun things that we're working on, trying to get back on iTunes, using SoundCloud and such. So you'll be able to digest our content with video here on YouTube, but also through the ears only, through iTunes, SoundCloud, those other websites. So with that said, thank you so much for joining me for Beyond the Panel. Thank you to JLS, Lords of the Long Box, for keeping me company, keeping that live chat alive on this Thursday morning. It is December 6th, 2018, the first issue of Beyond the Panel. We'll try and be back here next Thursday, same time, talking about the comics of next week. Of course, that's Han Solo Cadet number 2, Imperial Cadet number 2. You got that Darth Maul comic. You got Dr. Afro 27. A lot to talk about. And then to speculate what we get before the new year. Again, thanks for joining us, and join us for that live show on Sunday, 10 a.m. Central. I'm plugging that show shamelessly. I want you guys to show up. It would mean a lot. Oh, Lord's Longbox says he wants a pin. Oh, I want a pin. Go get that pin. We want you to get that pin. We want you to wear that pin on your show, man. That's going to give us some great love, and hopefully some more eyes on our channel. We are 3 subscribers away from hitting 700. We've talked to our comic shop, the Fantasy Shop in Maplewood, Missouri, and they say that they are going to give us a sweet giveaway for the end of the year. Perfect timing. Let's celebrate 700 subs and see if we can get to 800 by the new year shortly thereafter. And, I mentioned the Fantasy Shop. I want to give them one more shout out. I'm so thankful to have my local comic book shop as a sponsor of this show. To me, it really does mean the world. There are proud sponsors, and they have the comics, collectibles. They've got tons of toys, everything you need for Magic the Gathering, board games, the Fantasy Shop in St. Louis. Bradley serving St. Louis since 1981. If you're from St. Louis, go there. If you're not from the area, when you visit, make sure that you stop in. And boys, ladies, that's it for Beyond the Panel. May the Force be with you.